Hello and good evening, everybody. How you guys doing? Big up to all of you, all of our listeners. Hopefully, those are going to catch us later on as well. This is Imran Mohammed with yourself and my main man, Mr. Ivan Humble. Big up. How you doing, man? What's happening with you?
Yeah.
Are you good? Brilliant.
All good this week, I think.
The lockdown's over.
It's been a long week, but
it has been.
It's great, isn't it?
You know what I'm saying? It is, mate. It is. And I think hopefully it gets better and better and better.
To be fair, what a time to come out of it in time for the football. Do you know what I mean?
Hey.
And England doing well, and dare I talk about a bit of positivity. The country's kind of coming together again because of the football.
Aye.
Do you see what I mean?
Aye. Hopefully.
So as long as England do well, England do well, the country gets a buzz that they're doing well, whether you like football or not. So let's just hope.
Let's just hope. And guys, those of you listening,
bit creating the conversation. To start with, like.
It's gotta be done, my man. I agree with you. Let me say this, guys. Those of you listening, those who are going to be listening later on as well. This is the Creating the Conversation podcast. This is our 30th podcast. Wow. We started just a bit of a chill between myself and Ivan. And slowly, we've been getting all these different guests, brilliant guests, awesome guests. All right. And guys, you can listen to them, get back onto our channel and you can check it out. And today's guest, wow, my man, big up to you, bro. Do you know what I mean? You pull them out from all over the place, don't you? All right. And that is brilliant.
I was just going to say something quickly. You said about how this come together, this podcast. It came together with our strapline. We had a conversation.
We did.
So that's exactly born out of what we do. So, and we're now going to have a great conversation.
And oh my God, what a conversation we're going to have today. Guys, it's an honor because I say this is honor because when people come on, individuals come on with different experiences and they talk about and discuss about them things, it has an impact on every single person's life. Who do we have today, guys? This week, our guest is Phoebe Rose. Phoebe is a former white nationalist and a Zionist. She is also a trans woman. Phoebe was involved in the far right in England between 2016 to 2020. Phoebe is now starting the process of healing and helping others away from radicalisation and extremism. So today we're gonna talk to this young lady and we're gonna have that chat and we're gonna find out how did she get into it and what happened and how she came out of it and what she's doing at this moment in time. Phoebe, how you doing? I think your volume's gone somewhere. What's wrong with it?
That's better.
There you are. You muted yourself.
Hello.
Hey, welcome. Phoebe, how you doing?
I'm full of tea. I'm full of football. I'm full of toast.
Excellent.
I'm full of tennis.
I'm full of tennis. And it's all good.
Yeah.
It looks like where you are, of course, it's night at this moment in time, but it looks like where you are, where you've been, it's been really nice. It's been nice weather.
As I've appeared on other streams, someone said I'm in the sauna.
You're definitely not. You're not sweating like mud there.
No, I have adequate ventilation, shall we say.
Excellent. Phoebe, we are very, very grateful that you're here on Creating the Conversation podcast. And hopefully the conversation that we're going to have is about your journey, who you are as an individual, as a person. All right. And hopefully we will learn a lot from that. I want to start by asking you, how has been, firstly, of course, the lockdown been for you? All right. And then, of course, coming out of lockdown, how have you been?
Just like to say, it's a pleasure to be here today.
Thank you.
It's wonderful to have these abilities to actually just have a sane conversation with other human beings.
I'll question that. So some people have some issues about my sanity.
My sanity has been questioned. Also, other people that watch and other people that know me say that I do have an ego the size of Jupiter. So if you do see me getting out the pledge and polishing my ego, then there you go.
But do remember, Jupiter is full of what?
We don't know. We don't know.
But that's
We
what
don't
they
quite
say.
know.
Hey, look at you. Okay,
Have we ever been to the centre of Jupiter? Did we find its core? Or did we just go all the way through and
It's a
come out
guess.
the
It's a
other
guess.
side?
It is an educated guess, but God knows. All right, let's see. We'll talk about it afterwards. You know what I mean?
So yes, lockdown, oh lockdown. It's been odd. March 2020 to today has been odd. Because originally I was working through the first lockdown until I got a call from my doctor that said, no, please go into shielding. It was about 3 weeks after all this had started. So I ended up going into shielding in April, in May, in June. And then I was furloughed. So the first intra-lockdown period, as I called it, I had money coming in and nothing to do. So
Isn't that the ideal situation?
It was wonderful.
Nothing to do.
So yes, I exhausted my local cinema of all of the films it had on. I learned how to go paddleboarding. I went swimming. I did all these things I never thought I'd do. And then I realised to myself, hey, I can do all these things. And then work went, we want you to come back. And it's like, oh, for 3 weeks. And then they furloughed me again so that everyone else that was not furloughed could then be furloughed and then they could close the whole building down. Because there was a rule with the furlough that you had to have been on furlough for 3 weeks to take advantage of the furlough scheme.
That's right.
And so what they wanted to do is they wanted to close the building down. So they then brought everyone that was on furlough back into the building for 3 weeks so that everyone that had not been furloughed could get their 3 weeks off so that then they could just go, everyone's on furlough now. And it was the most insane thing ever. And that lasted until about December time.
Yes.
And then they decided, sod this, we're just going to bring everyone back. So I was actually going into where I was working in January of this year. So yeah, lockdown has been strange because I've been completely locked down in my house thanks to shielding. I have been out working during lockdown as well. So it's just like,
no,
I don't know whether it's 6 of one half
it is odd.
the other.
It is odd. It is strange. But one thing I think is very interesting, and we'll come to that throughout the whole conversation that we have with yourself today, is that because this particular lockdown has been very interesting for you. It's given you an opportunity to reflect, to think, to ponder, to do a lot of genuine internal reflection, right? And I think that's been really good for you, would you say?
I would say that lockdown and the pandemic changed my life.
Right.
Not in ways I ever thought, but it changed my life. I had a job that I was supposed to start in the middle of 2020, which never happened because pandemic. And I had all this time in April where I couldn't do anything. Wasn't legally allowed to do anything. And I had been reflecting on a lot of things in my life. A lot of trauma had happened to me in a fairly short space of time. 2018, 2019, a lot of trauma had happened. And then in 2020, I was able to go, oh, that happened. So I ended a very long-term relationship and I lost the entirety of the living generation above my parents. So all my grandparents died. So on my father's side, my two paternal grandparents, I never knew them. They died before I was born. But I did have on my mother's side grandmother, step-grandmother, and grandfather who all died within about 6 months of each other.
Wow.
And the reason that my relationship ended was because the person I was in a relationship with could not handle how I was mourning the death of my grandmother, and then couldn't handle how I was mourning the death of my step-grandmother. And she was like, stop this crying, stop this grieving, stop it. And I went, what?
Exactly.
And I entered the relationship, and that was the first time I took some control in my life.
Good.
That was the first relationship I ever ended in my life.
Yeah. But Phoebe, if you think about it for a second, that some very extreme situations have to occur and take place for someone to realize who is a friend and who's a foe. And these are the type of experiences that really jolt a human being and make them realize that. And I think for you, and I'm very sorry that you lost your family, may peace and harmony come into your life and some sort of stability, hopefully. But it is a grief and grievances, or this, bereavement. As we say, we have counseling for that. There's a particular process for that. There's a particular journey for that, right? And that the pain of that will always stay with you, right? And this is human. That's very human of us, right? And if that didn't happen, and if that is, I don't think we're human. That's the important thing. So for me, these type of experiences or these types of incidents that take place make me realize who's my friend and who's not, really, who is genuinely mine and who's not. And thank God you found that.
Yeah.
This particular individual was not the right person for you, and they've taken a complete journey to what is your journey, which is brilliant. Talking about journeys, I want to talk to you about, and of course, I've got to know you through my man Ivan, Mr. Ivan Humble here.
Hello, Ivan.
He's in. How you doing?
Hey.
Now,
he wasn't expecting that. You see, it caught him off guard. That did.
It truly did. You know what I mean? Talking about journey. So,
see, with me, I just get fascinated with the conversation. I don't forget that I'm here. I just get in my own world.
But you need to say something, my man. It got to be done, bro.
Dick and you're doing great. You're doing great. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much. Now,
cheers.
Talking about the early, your journey. I want to take you back to your childhood, right? And I want you to tell us and our listeners and our viewers, and for future purposes as well, for watching this particular podcast, is who you are. What is your origin? What would you like to share with us? Go for it, Phoebe.
And I'm as middle class as you can get. I'm as middle class, white, English, stereotypical 1990s, 2000s that you could have got. 2 parents, privately educated, south of England, religious schools, fairly religious person. But that masks a lot of things that happened behind closed doors. My father was an abusive man. A very abusive man, but only towards me. Not to my brother, not to my mother, just to me.
Why was that?
As I was never able to fulfill his expectations of what he thought his son should be.
And what was that?
He wanted the sporty, academic,
right,
everything. He wanted perfection, which didn't exist. Yes, I'm a sporty person, but not in the way that he thought. Yes, I'm academic, but I was not diagnosed with autism until I was in my mid-20s. And that held me back in the traditional academic sense. And he saw that he was spending the money on me going to be private educated, which was his choice. As something that should bear more fruit for him. And it was...
When you say bear fruit for him...
He wanted to see me excel in a way that he had never done.
Right. Isn't that normal?
It is and it isn't. Because it was unrealistic.
Right.
You want your children, first and foremost, to be happy. And to be the best that they can be. You shouldn't try to live your unfulfilled childhood through your children. And I think that there was a definite element of my father trying to do that.
Right.
And there was always a tension between us growing up. And that led to me being withdrawn So therefore, at school, I was not the most social person. So therefore, what does that happen? That means that that person gets bullied at school. And my father didn't take it seriously. Would have turned around and punched him. It was one of the things I remember him telling me. Which is not the most conducive thing you can do.
Especially when it comes down to parenting and etc.
Yeah.
Of an individual. But the thing is, for Phoebe, as fathers, right? There's and this is a very, in fact, this is across the board, really, right? And predominantly within the European context or the Western context. There's something I came across a while ago. There was a Netflix film documentary on the masks that we wear, and it was about young boys when they grow up, when they come up to youth, and what is that process? And within the Western context, they tend to, if a child shows any emotion, any feeling, any sense of love, any sense of so-called, they call it weakness. Like if a boy starts crying, right? Or don't be a girl, or don't be sissy, or don't. So all of these derogatory terms are used.
Right? My father used a lot.
Yeah. So which were very feminine in a lot of ways. Yeah. So what that does is that child, that boy, starts to become an individual that closes down emotionally, and that creates problems. So that, and I'm talking about the Western context, especially because in the Eastern context, the expression of these type of emotions by men is much more common and is much more public. Like the more east that you go, the more you realize that the cultures and the men within cultures, they cry, they show emotion, they show their feelings, right? They can be very expressive about it. They'll kiss each other, they'll hold hands with each other, right? They will do all of that.
Yeah. And
this is like friendship. This is called friendship, like women do within the Western context. Men would do that in the Eastern context. But this is a whole area of conversation, discussion within the Western context. And that particular documentary highlighted that point, that what we are doing to our boys is that we are making them individuals. If they show emotion, they are weak. So what do? They don't show emotion. They don't cry. Boys don't cry.
It wasn't just that you don't show crying, you don't show anger either.
Exactly.
If you show anger, that's defiance. That's defiance.
Yes, you're right.
So, and you're supposed to just be stoic.
Yes.
You're supposed to just be content, stoic, and get on with it.
Yes. Which is not human.
No, of course it's not.
Which is not human. And that's the thing. That's the issue that we have. Is if you are not expressive, if you don't show, that sense of anger or frustration or whatever it is, whatever's going on within yourself, what happens? It comes out in some weird ways. It happens.
Oh, it does.
So what happened with yourself, Phoebe? So from there, you were headlong with your dad, right? Always maybe in a position of state. Of course, you were more silent, more quiet, right? Yeah. More of an individual, became a recluse.
Much more withdrawn.
Much more withdrawn, yeah.
And I ended up going off to university because I thought that's what I wanted to do. And I look back on those 3 years at university as I was there because some other people wanted me there. I never wanted to really be there. But I did it. I completed it. And I look at those years and I just think of them as A, why was I doing the course I was doing? B, why was I doing it when I was doing it? And C, why was I doing it where I was doing it? But I now have a degree from that institution. And
have you found the answers for all the questions that you just posed?
I think I have, but I think that there's a lot more depth to them that I haven't explored yet. I know why I went to university. It's because it was expected of me. I know why I went to that university. It's because they accepted me. And I know why I did that course. It's because they said that this would be the best course for me to do. And I didn't know how to say no.
Right. Is that very common in you?
Used to be.
Right.
Not anymore. I'm a lot more defiant in myself now. But defiant in a way where I'm standing up for myself. Which is something that I never used to do.
So you're much more of a follower.
I always was. Now I'm much more of a... Somebody said you're much more of an individual in a crowd as opposed to being blended into the crowd.
Yes. Yes, I can see that. All right, Phoebe. So you were in university. You were in university. So you did a particular course. Would you want to share with them what you did?
Not really.
Okay. No,
It's one of those things that I just look back and I go, it's really a bit of a waste.
Yeah, that's fine.
I did that course. It was a science course. It was a science-based course, but I've never used it but it has been a gateway to me getting into other courses that I've wanted to do at postgraduate level.
So when you finished your graduation, you said you were diagnosed with autistic.
Not yet. That was later.
That
wasn't until my mid-20s.
Right.
What happened next to me was I fell in love, as they say.
Wow.
And I met a Geordie girl, a Jewish Geordie girl.
Jewish Geordie girl.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I was really close to marrying her. But that never happened. Because one day I came home. She told me she was pregnant. There's her thinking I'm going to be all happy. And there's me doing some maths in my head. Oh. That can't work. Because I can't have had... And then... Oh. And then I pointed that out to her. And then she admitted she'd slept with someone else.
Right.
But her original plan was to palm it off that I was the father. But in my head, I went, that's not possible because I've been away for a couple of months on business. And it didn't make any sense. It was not something that was possible to have happened, shall we say.
Just because you had been away from each other for a certain period. But you were sexually active, you were in a relationship,
before that we were.
All of that, of course, that was there. So she had something to say, didn't she, on the back of that? Yeah. But that relationship gave you something, Phoebe.
It gave me Judaism. So I was raised as a high Anglican, went to Anglican schools, and I've spoken about this in another podcast. And I was quite deeply into the Christianity. And then I went to university, and then I found that Sundays were much better recovering from the party that I'd been to than going to church.
Fair enough.
And that Sundays were also quite a nice day to recover from that party, do all the work I should have done during the week, rather than going out somewhere else. So Christianity fell away. But the entry into Judaism was first done with my ex-fiancée.
Mm.
And that stayed with me even after I had left the relationship. And then
what kept you within that tradition?
I liked it. I like a lot of structure, and it gave me a lot of structure. And I also like that you got to do a lot of eating, and a lot of happiness, and a lot of festivals, and a lot of way all the time. Because Judaism does have a lot of festivals.
Of course it does.
And they're quite long as well. And there's always lots of food.
Yes.
Lots of lovely food, and there's a lot of Jewish food that stays in my diet that is far, far too unhealthy for me. But it is wonderful food.
No, you found a sense of belonging.
I did.
You became part of a particular group of people. You were accepted, at least through that relationship of love that you had started with, right? And all of them elements were significant, all right, to keep you there. Which, in a way, if we delve slightly back into your earlier life, probably didn't exist.
It was devoid.
It was devoid. So in a way, you found that in this, and it seems like the type of person that you are. You latched onto it. You know, lock, stock, barrel. That's what you done.
Yeah. And it was around this time that I also realised that when I was about 21, that I wanted to transition again. So I haven't mentioned that in my mid-teens I started a transition, went off university, stopped that transition, went through university, found this relationship. That relationship ended. I entered into Judaism, and I decided to transition.
So this is physical transition.
Yes.
Right. So in your teens, what did you do? Blockers? Did you?
In my teens, I saw a psychiatrist. My parents didn't know I saw a psychiatrist. When I was out and away from things, I was the person that I wanted to be, not the person that I was, if that makes sense. So the person that I was presenting as around family, around people, was different to the person that I was when I wasn't around them.
Yeah.
And some people at school knew, some teachers at school knew, and it was one of those things that it was just like, we don't really know what to do. And then I went off to university, and I decided I'll give this being a man shtick a go. It didn't go very well because it just pushed it all back down.
Right.
And then when the relationship with my ex-fiancée ended, I was entering into a different part of my life, and I'd found a new religion that I was quite comfortable with, and I was finding a new me that I was quite comfortable with as well. So it was a clean break, as I saw it, from everything. And I went into both of them with both feet, and I went whole hog on both of them. It's probably the best way to describe it.
So you were, what tradition was it exactly of the Jewish from
So I ended up in Masorti Judaism. So for those of you in North America, you will know this as conservative Judaism. So for those of you that are not aware of how the global Jewish congregations are separated, in broad terms, you have liberal Judaism and Reform Judaism on one side.
Critical goes woof.
I know him, and I have pointed him in this direction. And then you have Orthodox and Hasidic Judaism on the other side. And in some ways, sitting in the middle is Masorti conservative Judaism. So Masorti conservative Judaism is accepting of LGBT individuals. It was accepting of me as a trans woman. But it also kept a lot of the traditions. It kept all of the festivals, and it stayed very focused and very true to the origination and the interpretations of the more conservative...
the original orthodoxy of the tradition.
Yes, that's the best way to describe it. As opposed to some of the more liberal or reform interpretations that I didn't really identify with. So they were a nice, happy medium that accepted me for me, and then quite happily said, oh yes, we also have quite a lot of things that I identify with. Oh, they'll do very nicely.
So when
that's
you
how
say
it ended up there.
You say there's a number of, because for me, my study and my knowledge of Judaism, I'm well aware of the other four, but of course, Masorti is something which I was not aware of, and of course we have discussed and conversed about this earlier on today. And what was interesting for me is what you said, that there are certain things that you saw yourself as an individual, as a person, and this particular tradition accepted them elements of you.
Yes.
Do you want to share that, please?
So those elements of, I like to follow things as I see them as they're written. I'm quite rules-based in the way that I will follow things. I've been told that that's one of the classic things with my autism, but it's what makes me me. And if psychiatrists or doctors want to put that label on it, that's up to them.
Yeah.
But I've been told that I like to follow things as they're written. And the way that I viewed Masorti Judaism...
Black and white.
That's it. They viewed me in the way that I presented. And they also kept quite true to the Tanakh and the Talmud in the sense that I enjoyed it being kept close to. So you could, if you wanted, in certain situations, there was segregation of males and females, and they allowed me to sit with females. There was a lot of keeping to the actual texts a lot more. There was a lot of keeping to the less observed festivals, such as Tu B'Av, which is not widely followed in liberal or reform Judaism. So it was much more, they are what I would consider, in my opinion, to be holistically what I considered Judaism. But they also saw me as being able to slot into that, whereas Orthodox and Hasidic Judaism were, no thank you, because in America, the Orthodox Jewish congregation supported the constitutional amendment to outlaw same-sex marriages and have been quite opposed to trans individuals and non-heterosexual individuals. So they were not a group that I was prepared to hang my hat on. But Masorti Judaism came as this nice, happy area where they accepted me for me, but they also accepted what I considered to be the traditional holistic Jewish faith.
Brilliant. Now, Phoebe, because that's why it intrigued my interest when you said you are one key area of your ideology and the way you look at the world is that is a Zionist, perspective from that. And of course, in a lot of it, there's a political movement, there's a political ideology, it has a particular, political, outlet to it. We understand that historically, why did that come into existence? Because of the immense oppression that took place upon the Jewish people in Europe, and of course, this was a reaction to find, a homeland for themselves, and of course, for them to be safe in that particular environment. That was the whole, premises and the foundation of this particular ideology. Now, what was interesting, because you've gone into the tradition of the religion and the faith itself, and I know the Jewish people, especially in our context here within Britain, and of course now internationally, they do not only see themselves as a religious entity, they see themselves as a completely different race. And that's why I said to you, but it would have been because you found this particular tradition of Masorti, but the rest of them, they would have major issues with you.
They would do, yes.
Yeah, not only because of the way you see yourself in this transition, in being who you are on sexuality wise, and the way you see yourself. Not only that, but also you weren't born as a Jew. Your mom's not a Jew. You don't have that particular lineage or tradition, right? Which would be very, very complicated when it comes down to the normal traditions or the study of Judea and the Judea traditions per se, or at least from the perspective that is shared with the world. That's why I said this was really interesting for me. When you mentioned about Masorti, go for it.
So I think the thing that what you mentioned there made me go to a greater level of extremity, as if to prove to myself and to prove to other people that I was genuine and that what I was doing was okay, even though I didn't have some of the elements as a birthright.
So the zeal of the convert.
That's exactly the way that I look back and I go, yes, there was a lot of zeal in me because I was the convert and I had to prove that I was as good as somebody who had it as a birthright.
See, that's what's really interesting, Phoebe, because what we found in my particular engagement with, for example, the Islamists and the far right and far right extremists, is what we find is that these individuals who tend to lash out, people who are the most loudest, people who are standing, on the streets and they go, hey, us and them, blah, whatever they say. I don't want to say that here. Right? Now, whatever. Now, usually they are those people who've just literally come in, right? They just about learned the basics of what's going on, whatever the ideology and philosophy it is. And sadly, sometimes they are used and sometimes they are abused, all right, by the the tradition or the people who hold onto the banner, who hold the barracks down, by them as the leaders, and these new fresh faces are used and abused, sadly. But in your case, of course, you like you said, and there's a lot to do with because your autistic background, because of the type of upbringing that you have. It says a lot about you. It's like the archetype of an individual who's definitely going to go down a certain pathway. Not always, but we can guess that. Do you know what I mean? As your journey, and so you went from this. You found some sort of sense of yourself of belonging, which I think is brilliant. Tell me what happened after that then. So what went from being a religious Jewish individual who had just come out of a particular relationship, you were in transition, all right, physically as well yourself. How the hell did you get into the summer stuff that you have, mate? What happened?
A lot. It's all I can say is a lot happened. So
this is like 2016, or are we still talking about before that?
So we're not quite there yet. So I have traced back the kernel of my hate, shall we say,
right,
to an event that took place in Scotland in October 2014, where I was date raped by a friend. I'm not going to delve too deeply into that, but that event was the kernel of my hate. I was betrayed by somebody that I saw as a friend, and I was betrayed by the authorities. I was betrayed by those around me. And that was, looking back at it, that was the kernel of my hate.
Would you share the profile of the individual so we can understand why you attach that particular hate with a particular group of people? Because what's happening is
because she was a post-operative trans woman and I was a pre-operative trans woman.
Right.
Is
the basics. Yeah. Right.
The basics of it.
Right. So tell me how that hate evolved and became what it became.
So I distanced myself from my family a lot more. And eventually I got enough money together in 2015 to go to Thailand. And for those of you that don't know, Thailand is probably the number one destination for people traveling internationally to have lower genital surgery from male to female. And while I was out there, I met somebody and I entered into a relationship with them. And this was the start. So this was the relationship that started me on the path to entering the far right.
Right.
We both had difficult childhoods. We both had very difficult relationships with our families. And we connected on our political outlooks, shall we say. And that individual slowly started to feed me some of the extremist stuff. So it was, I've seen this philosopher. He talks about this and this and this. A bit more of that, a bit more of that. Delve deeply into all of that and you swallow that. Oh, there's this Canadian that says things that I think you'll like. A bit more of that. Oh, have you heard of this person? Have you heard of this person? Have you read this book? Have you read this book? And then slowly, because they were someone that I was in a relationship with, and I was in love with this person. I was in love with her. I found someone that I could see myself as learning from. This person, I will say, is probably the most intelligent person I have ever been in a room with. in terms of IQ. And there was
You
a
were in the
degree,
awe of this individual.
there was a degree of me
So
looking up to this
you did what they said, basically.
to a point, but it would be structured in a way that they would have an intellectual argument.
Because the way they've done it, which is really interesting, what they've done, this individual has done, is that they have realized that you are an academic individual, you are interested in knowledge and understanding, and this person used that. And this is very, when you look at the process of radicalization and extremism, and how you can radicalize an individual and bring them onto a particular ideology and way of thinking. This is how it works. You find the trigger. It might be a grievance. It might be an anger, as a point of anger. It might just be their interest. And if it's an interest, we can start off a conversation with you.
Yeah.
And that's all it takes. It starts from an interest. And then we say, oh, you know what? Read this. What do you think about this? What do you know about this? And slowly, without even sometimes realizing that person will start to spew out certain type of views and ideas. It's like, oh my Lord, what the hell did you just say there? If a third person was listening.
And
so
the things were race and IQ. Right. They presented race and IQ from statistics.
Yes.
Academic literature.
Yes.
Standard deviations.
Yes.
Economic development of certain countries. And when you are fed,
which really can all be manipulated.
Because just on a slightly different thing, there was a court case today where a judge turned around and said, I reject the claimant's argument here because it is clear that the claimant has seriously manipulated the statistics they have brought and they do not represent an accurate picture of the facts. And you're absolutely right. They can all be manipulated, and you can all go on anecdotes made to look like science.
Yes. And for a mind like yours, a brain like yours, who's very methodical, if I may put it like that, that's what interested. This individual found the way to get into your head. Go for it, Ivan.
Yeah, looking back, Phoebe, on that bit when they were like giving you stuff to read, and like you said, you went headfirst into it. Looking back, do you think your autism played a part in that? If you become maybe transfixed on thing?
If you can walk me through something.
In a way, my journey, I've got a chemical imbalance in my brain.
Because as I say, if you walk me through something methodically.
Yeah, so I've got a chemical imbalance. Like me.
I'm sorry, I think we've lost you, Ivan.
No, carry on, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if we can take you through methodically, you were stating.
So if you can take me through methodically, and you can show it in a logical and rational way, my brain, and yet autism plays a part in this, will latch onto that as something that I can see to almost glob onto and go.
Yes.
And that's what I sunk my teeth into.
That's right.
Was that it was presented to me not as a belief, but as a fact.
Yes. And that's what's powerful in this. That's what's powerful in this, Phoebe, right? Because in majority of the people who become radicalized, who come into this field of radicalization, what they have found, what studies have found, is a lot of these individuals have some sort of they're on the spectrum, they're on the autistic spectrum somewhere. In fact, all human beings are on the spectrum somewhere. That's a fact. But some people are much more further on than others are. That's what tends to happen. Yeah. And the other thing what they've realized is that these people become asphyxiated on certain things. And if you can make them get asphyxiated on a very extreme a view, an idea, and a philosophy, or stuff like that, then you could do whatever you want. Now they could become fixated on. We usually laugh about if a person becomes fixated on the idea of botany, for example. No problem.
Flat Earthers are another example.
Flat Earth for another example. Yeah, exactly. Another example. Yeah, you got people like that. Fine, that's your view, that's your idea, whatever it is. Get on with it. But if they get fixated on something which is a bit extreme, guess what? They don't see the nuances. They don't understand the nuances. Like you said, methodically, if someone can do that, and that's exactly what happened with you, Phoebe, didn't it?
Exactly what happened.
Exactly.
Because I will remember that it was, here is episode 1, the starting point. Watch these in this order.
Yes. So you went through that process. You started to fall into that particular way of thinking and reflection and thought and ideas and philosophies and etc., which started to make sense to you logically.
Oh yeah, it all started to fall into a jigsaw that I
said
didn't realise was there.
Exactly.
Because somebody else had put the frame around of the
That's
jigsaw, and they were putting their own pieces in.
Exactly. And they were cutting the shapes as they wanted. They weren't already made up shapes. That's the weird thing, right?
Yeah.
Because like I said, all statistics and all numbers and etc. can be manipulated. It's possible to do that. Now we have this individual. You fall in love with this individual. You have a particular relationship with this individual. You've started to take on their views and ideas, and you start to learn and study and etc. So you are a Masurti practicing Jew.
Yes. And
where did you go from there?
I've never hidden that. These individuals, particularly the ones out of Canada, would always condemn anti-Semitism, would always condemn attacks on Jews. And I always found a level of comfort in that. But then they would always pivot to
Phoebe, I think we've lost you.
No, she's back.
No, she's not back yet. Phoebe, all you need to do is if you go off and come back on again, right? Hopefully we'll have you back on again. That'd be brilliant. Now, this is our guest for today, guys, on creating the conversation. This is Phoebe Rose, an individual who's telling us about her particular journey, her particular life, in how she became part of a neo-Nazi and later on, of course, part of EDL. What a fascinating life. What and individuals, different elements and different components which have impacted this individual. We found out about her autistic background. We found out about her basics of her family. We found out about her being in love with different people and different individuals. And of course, finding that how these individuals have impacted the way she thinks and sees the world, which is really powerful. I think it's fascinating life of this individual, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm like, I forget I'm on here sometimes. You just sit here listening. But yeah, the one thing I take from it is the explanation of the frame and people putting the jigsaw puzzles in, their own pieces in. I thought that was a really good way to explain it. I never had it explained, I guess.
I do apologise for that. I don't quite know what happened there.
No, it's okay. It's not a problem. It's fine. We were just talking about what you mentioned, and Ivan was mentioning that it's a very good analogy the way you said it. That it's like putting different pieces of jigsaw put together, and once that's done, right, you are getting a particular type
in somebody else's frame.
There, you said it, in somebody else's frame, which is excellent the way you explained it, and that's exactly it. That is exactly it. They don't let you see beyond that. They only want you to see what they want you to see, and that's exactly what happened with you. So you've gone from one particular place. Someone has taken advantage of certain elements within yourself, Phoebe. Now you are transitioning psychologically. Not physically, talking about psychologically. Tell me that transition, and tell me how you became part of a nationalist, socialist group of people, or at least you started to walk down that particular pathway, please.
So the way that it happened was I came back to the UK because the person that I had met was an American, so the relationship became a long-distance relationship. And they suggested to me that I should become more social, go out a bit, find some new friends. So what do? She sent me some links to some groups. I found some links to some groups of people who I was considering sharing similar ideologies as me, ways that I was thinking, particularly on the issues that I was being fed. And got chatting with a couple of people over the internet, and somebody near me said, well, why don't you come down the pub? Couldn't say no.
Come for a pint. What do you say? Come on, let's go.
And my response was, do they serve food?
Hey, look at you. Oh, yes. Your favourite stuff.
Do they serve food?
Fair enough.
So, this pub did. Walked in there, sat down, and we got chatting. And that was the door swinging wide open.
Right.
Because we had a conversation and someone was listening to me. I've been open with this person that I was Jewish. I've been open with this person that I was trans.
And this is in the pub.
This is in the pub. This was before we went to the pub. I've been open with this person. So this person knew all these things about me. And they still were happy to sit down and talk with me.
Right.
That didn't matter to them.
Which
we were in this.
Doesn't happen.
Usually it doesn't happen because usually one of those things will push somebody away. Somebody will get freaked out by one of those things. But this person was happy to sit down with me. And I asked this person later, why did you sit down with me that day? Because you were saying the things that I liked.
Right. Interesting.
And I wanted to see if you were for real. It turns out you were for real.
So the things that you were saying, share that with us.
I'm not sure YouTube will like what I'm going to say, but it was white people are smarter because they're white. There needs to be a safe place for all Jews, and that safe place is called Israel. And the biggest threat to this country are, excuse me for what I'm about to say here, those dirty effing Muslims.
So you were regurgitating exactly what the framework that was given to you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And those kind of things, you saw the guy smiling when I was saying them. And we would go into details. We were in this pub for hours. The only reason that we left the pub was because closing time happened.
Wow, right.
We just chatted. And chatted. And then next time he said, do you mind if I bring a couple of friends along? Yeah, sure. And then it spirals from there. And then they say, would you like to come along to this meeting? Would you like this and this?
So these individuals were already part of a particular structure.
They were, yes.
Okay.
Whether they were part of a formalized structure or whether they knew they were part of a formalized structure is something different. I think they may have seen it just as a group of mates, a group of friends. But the thing that also got me was that when time he came along the second time, it wasn't just him, but a couple of ladies with him. So it made me feel as if it wasn't just a man's movement. And I could speak to the ladies as well as the men. And all of us were chatting to each other. So it wasn't like you see down at like a golf club where it's the men over there and the women over there. It felt like I had found a community that was happy to accept me whilst I was happily eating whatever the pub was serving, whilst they were happily drinking away and I was chatting away with them like it was going out of fashion. And it was that sense of belonging to a community that accepted me and knew that I was trans, knew that I was Jewish, but still didn't care. Or if they cared, they had the front to say, we'll overlook that. I had people say, I don't understand it, but I don't care. And I had a couple of people say, well, can you tell me about it? They were interested in learning about it. So I was seen as a bit of a font of knowledge to some people.
The oracle.
Yeah. And I was seen as, by some people, I was seen as tomorrow's movement.
Yes.
I had somebody say to me, "We've seen what Marine Le Pen has done, and we see a lot of her in you."
Oh wow, right. You know, when you talk about smoke, you know, someone blowing some smoke up somewhere, that is the best thing to do, isn't it? If you say something like that, the person will be like, "Woohoo!" Really?
Yeah. And it spiraled from there.
Right. So what they've done is, and this is very normal. You know, in that particular position, etc. The way you were, you feel very special naturally, and which is good. There's nothing wrong with that. When you want to be part and parcel of a group of people, being part, belonging to someone, having people accepting who you are as an individual, which is the most beautiful feeling.
And having been rejected throughout most of my childhood, most of my adult life for who I am, to find people that went, "Come on, come in."
Yes. And your in a way, was them views, them ideas, right? Them, you know, whatever has been shared with you. So naturally, what would happen? You will become much more hardened in them views.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. You go, 1 minute. It's not only me who thinks like this, or not only the person who shared that with me when I was abroad, but in fact,
I'm not the extremist. Everyone else is wrong. I'm amongst the mainstream. It's just the extremists have taken over in other parts, and they get their views out.
So who did you see as the extremist then?
BBC. Left-leaning newspapers, and a number of politicians that were in the country. In a strange way, I never viewed the Scottish National Party as part of the problem, because in a way I saw them as, well, they're only doing what's natural. They just want to clear off, and then they want to leave the rest of us alone. I don't care that they're left-wing or centrist. They want to walk away and leave us alone.
But that makes sense why you would do that, because if you think about it for a second, that's exactly what the Zionist movement is based on, the idea that we have our own homeland and we won't touch and harm nobody. Let us get on with it.
Yeah.
Right. So in a way, that's exactly what the Nationalist Scottish Party is stating.
And I say that to people, and people don't get it. But it's, as you say, it's a natural conclusion. It's a natural movement.
Yeah.
To say, well, they want their own homeland. I want my own homeland. Now sod off.
No, you know what you just said there, Phoebe? Let me share something with you. So I had the opportunity to work with a number of individuals who come from a particular extreme background, right, of views and ideas. And I came across this young man. This young man got to be working with me. He was a very far extreme views he had. So he believed in the whole idea of the race war. He believed that simply people of color, meaning talking about dark colors, cannot really live with white people. Simple as that. But with me, he started to have that conversation because there's many things I had interest in, which he has interest in. So the stuff, the material that he would read, I would have background knowledge of that. I understood where it came from. I understood that. So I would have a fair, open conversation with this individual. So the writers, the views and ideas and etc. And even though I am the person he has the problem with, and this is what was interesting, Phoebe, that a point came. So I asked him very directly. I go, you have said a few times that I would want, this is my ideal situation, I would want all people who are black and brown to pack up the bags and go back to their homelands.
That's how I thought.
Yeah.
That was my view.
Yeah. And I asked this young man, I go, do you want the same for me? Now, do you remember, he's got to know me a little bit now. Now, he's got to know who I am. He knows how I think, etc. Yeah. And I've got to give it to him. You know what he said to me? There's another young gentleman who was autistic. He had particular tendency, etc. He goes, I like you, but I still want you to go.
Well, yeah. That was how I would have said. That's the answer I would have given you. I would have told you, yeah, you're lovely. I might even come on holiday there and see you. But please, leave me alone.
There you said it. And you know what you just said there? Now, this part is really difficult for people to understand what's being just said there. Because that's really powerful. Because that person is simply saying, I don't want you here. I want my people here.
Yeah.
People who look like me or of the same color as me, of the same culture as me, and I don't want you here.
Yeah. Doesn't matter how much I get to know you. Doesn't matter how friendly I get with you. Sorry.
Bugger off.
This is my castle. Get out of my castle.
Yes. Whereas if someone had a little bit, and this is the thing, methodically, if this is taught, that in fact the castle that you are in, I helped to build that castle.
Oh, I know. Now, but then...
I'm messing about.
I know what you're saying, but I know now. But then, I would have gone, no, you're lying. So what? It's my castle now.
My castle. That's what it is. So you became, of course, your center point. People started to, listen to you. You started to become a part of a particular group of individuals. So what was your choice of group that you became part of?
They got me first, and it was the UDL.
Ah, my God. Ivan, what's going on, my man? You're dragging everybody in, aren't you?
Yeah, and they would have accepted you straight away. It's like they would have accepted you straight away. Do you know what I mean? I know that because when I was involved in that, we accepted Jews, gays, everything. Do you know what I mean? So that was kind of like your first stepping stone, really, I guess.
Particularly as I was part of the EDL in Brighton. And, Brighton is sexually and gender diverse place in and of itself.
Because what was interesting for me was, with the grumpy old man, the podcast that you done with our friend. And what was interesting was that you said, look, I became part of EDL, right? And I know one of the key hates and the reason why EDL came into existence was that they had issues and problems with the Islamists. Their main hate was Muslims.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas what's interesting about your journey is that I can't see anywhere where you came across Muslims and how you formulated the idea and hate of Muslims. Because
the simplest thing was I viewed Israel as having been a place that is for Jews and Jews alone.
Right.
And Muslims, I'm afraid, when I was in the movement, were seen by me as desecrators of where I wanted all of the Jews to be.
Right.
And the Syrian civil war gave credence to that, to me, when I saw cultural destruction take place.
At the hands of ISIS.
Yes.
Okay.
Because I then saw it as they were quite happy to go and do that in Israel. And
But they didn't do in Israel.
And I viewed...
But you know this, Phoebe, that they didn't do that in Israel.
I know.
That's what's really interesting.
And I viewed it as the only reason they didn't do that was because Israel protected itself properly. It has the Iron Dome. It has the wall. It has the advanced military. And whilst I was in that extreme Zionist mindset, I was quite happy to say, keep bombing Gaza, keep bombing those places, because you're going to stop them from being a threat. If you can't let them build up anything, they can never be a threat.
Right. Yeah. Bomb them into the Stone Age and just keep them there. That's what you do normally. Right. Okay.
And then they cannot be a threat because you can always have the tank that can roll in. You can always have the man with the gun. You can always have the plane dropping the bomb. That was my mindset. And I saw those bombings, particularly the airstrikes in places like the West Bank, in places like the Gaza Strip, as necessities for the security of Israel. But not because they were specifically targeting just Hamas or just other organizations, but because they were preventing those areas from ever becoming a threat, because they were being prevented from developing into a threat. And if you've got things that are
very methodical, very
if
black and white.
Yeah. And my view was, if they are worrying about their children wandering around rubble as opposed to their children being taught how to fire a gun, I'd rather they worried about their children wandering through rubble than being taught how to fire a gun.
Wow.
Because that gun could be used against my people in my homeland and my security and threaten the place that I want all of my people to be.
Whereas all of that was happening or is happening in Israel.
And in those times, I would tell people Israel was doing nothing wrong.
Yes. Right.
I would tell people how Ariel Sharon was a traitor because he gave up these settlements in the Gaza Strip. I would say that Benjamin Netanyahu annexing more and more of the West Bank was the only necessary and stable thing to do.
See, Phoebe, what's interesting in this is this. You were lock, stock, barrel into this ideology. You are taken this ideology to become the central meaning of your existence. In opposite to that, whoever stood opposite to that was your enemy. You were happy for that enemy to be quashed, annihilated, removed, destroyed, bombed into the Stone Ages, regardless of them being human, mothers, children, babies, whatever they were. And all because, see, this is the thing that we, myself and Ivan, and of course on this particular platform, Creating the Conversation podcast, we keep on banging on about the power of ideology. And all what you've just said is all ideologically based. Because for a moment, if that frame had broken, you would have seen, 1 minute, there's kids on that side, there's women on that side, there's etc., people on that side.
Yeah.
But you didn't. That's the power of ideology. Wow, my Lord. Phoebe, you're the woman. I'm going to say it. Wow. Go for it, Ivan, my man.
It's that blink of view. You can only see that one way, and it's your way.
Yeah.
Right. So now we're talking about, guys, this is powerful stuff. This is amazing stuff because, a lot of us don't discuss that. We don't talk about that. We don't get into the, the nitty and gritty of what it is all about. And I'm really grateful to you, Phoebe, that you're sharing this with us. All right. And for the benefit of all that will be listening, hopefully they can take this from your life and maybe not go down the same pathway or the same journey they may take. It might give them a completely different route. Now, you are in that world. You don't really care who's on the other side. They get murdered, they get killed, they get pillaged. Who gives a toss about them? Do you know what I mean? Because tough luck, they're against me and I'm against them. Don't.
Yeah.
You're part of EDL, which is really surprising in itself. Because I don't disagree with what Ivan just said. That it's in a way they'll accept anybody, which is not a problem if you have the same ideology, which is not an issue. But the type of person you are, private individual you are, you became a bit of a trophy for them, didn't you?
Absolutely. The number of married men that slept with me in the movement, yeah.
Which you felt comfortable with.
Absolutely. Who woman in her late 20s getting all the sex she wants? Well, hey, who's gonna? What? I wasn't gonna complain. I know I couldn't get pregnant. What was I gonna care about?
So you have an ideology, you have people around you, people like you, people want to be with you, you got the food, you got everything. You got everything.
Yeah.
What changed it? And you were in there for 5 years. We're not talking about you were there for a few months and you go,
I was invited by people to give speeches, to stand up on stages and go.
So you've got the notoriety, you've got the fame, you've got the name, you've got respect, you've got everything that you didn't have, or you've been trying to look for in all of your life. You found it.
I did.
Found a family.
How come you opened the back door and walked out? What happened?
Because the only family that ever loved me died.
1 minute. So there's something else here then. Tell me about that. Because that means that love, you could tell the difference between that love and the affection and the love and, all of the show and etc. that was being given to you. You could tell the difference.
In the course of about 6 months, I lost the entirety of the generation directly above my parents.
Right. Oh, my Lord.
And during this period, the relationship that I have mentioned that radicalized me fell apart. Because this individual could not cope with the way I was grieving, the way I was mourning. So, on my father's side, I never knew my paternal grandparents, but on my mother's side, I had grandmother, a step-grandmother, and a grandfather. And they all died within a short space of time, about 6 months. And this was 2018 into 2019. So we're talking late November 2018 to July, August 2019. And the relationship I had, she turned around and said, stop this. You knew that they were going to die. They were old people. You knew they were going to die. Why are you behaving like this? And for the first time in my life, I ended a relationship.
Right.
I ended that
control.
Relationship.
Oh, my Lord, you took control.
And that was the first time I'd ever done that.
Right. But no, in a way, let me share something with you. This is my observation. I see that there was something else that made you do something when you went abroad. You okay?
I am.
Yeah. That was a time when you did take control, but I think that was predominantly filled with anger. When you went abroad, right, to go through that particular procedure, that was also taking control.
Apologies for that. Charge. I had to close the window. It started to rain.
It's all right. It's all right. It's all good. It's all good. And this is but the difference is that was based in anger, but this is based in love, which is the difference. So in both cases, you did take charge.
Yeah.
So tell me what happened when you took charge in love.
There was something else that happened that I will never forget after my grandmother died. It was the worst funeral that I have ever attended in my life. So that compounded the tragedy and the grief that I had. Because the individual who was taking it, my grandmother, was a Christian, practicing Christian most of her life. And the chaplain that she'd chosen didn't take it seriously. Didn't take the funeral seriously. So the family had decided, yes, some of the grandkids are going to go up and speak as well. And I'd been selected to go up and speak. Even though I didn't have the best of relationships, they knew that there's a sensible thing to go. But he cut that off. Would only let wouldn't let the grandchildren go up and speak. And at points was calling into the congregation. Well, he had another engagement. He was running out of time. He had to move things along.
Right.
And it was disrespectful. And I had family members who had hijacked the whole process. There were family members taking selfies with the casket, with the coffin.
Especially for someone who is very to the letter, someone like you, religiously, you prefer things which are written down, black and white.
Yeah.
This would have shaken you to the core.
Yeah. And they were hysterical individuals throughout the process. I don't mean hysterical as in ha ha. I mean hysterical as in you're not doing very well hysterical.
Right.
I mean, they stayed until the funeral director said, we need to empty out the vestry. And they then followed the coffin all the way up to the crematoria.
Right.
This was hours and hours after the funeral had finished. And as an act of defiance, I refused to go to the wake afterwards. Instead, I walked off before anyone could realise that I had gone. And I'd gone into town, and I was in the local cinema, and I had some fish and chips, and I told anybody that was trying to get hold of me where they could go and shove themselves.
Right.
And I will never be able to understand that person that was hired to take that funeral. And it really did shake me a lot. And from there, so that happens in late 2018. And then in 2019, the other deaths happen and the ending of the relationship happens. And I'm starting to say to people, look, I need some space.
Right.
I need to withdraw because I'm no good out at the moment. As lovely as you are,
because you were grieving.
I'm no good out. Yeah. I mean, the flat I had covered the mirrors, the works.
So let's get this straight. It has nothing to do with your ideology. You still have the same ideology, same way of thinking, same, model of the world, etc. That's what you held. It's all to do with because now you're going through a very difficult time. You're grieving, you have had loss, there's a breakdown of a relationship, etc. And that's where you are. You just need me time.
And so 2009 rolls through, and it's about December time that I'm realizing I'm no good around these parts at the moment. No good. And so I would sit there, and when you're in a conversation and you can hear the conversation going on around you, but you're not taking part in it. You're just sat there.
Yeah.
And that's what was happening.
Right.
And then 2019 rolls into 2020, and the world shuts. Completely shuts. So I'm not going to work. I'm told by my GP, you need to start shielding. So I'm at home, all alone, not allowed to go out, not interacting with other human beings. And one day, everything hit me. Absolutely everything, like a brick wall. And I felt physically ill for about a month. Wasn't COVID, wasn't anything like that. I was physically ill for about a month.
When you say everything, could you elaborate, please?
I was looking back on what I had done in my life.
Right.
At this time.
So it's not only the deaths now.
I had
Not only the
expanded what I was looking at.
Right.
And
The bigger picture.
when you are alone, and you've only got yourself, and I was not really engaging with the internet at this time because I wasn't really up for. My mind wasn't there. And when you've just got yourself and all you're doing is you're thinking about yourself, something fell apart.
Right.
All in one go. And that wall of pain and hurt and grief all collapsed in one go. And I was a total mess.
Yes.
Physically, emotionally, mentally for about a month. Wouldn't get out of bed. Would only have the only interaction that I'd have was that I'd known that somebody had delivered the groceries to my door and left them there. That would be it. And when you hit rock bottom, you don't realise you've hit rock bottom. But that was my rock bottom. And then I slowly started to come out of it. And then in about August time, people tried to reconnect with me. And I tried to reconnect with them. But I had lost the connection. And my brain wasn't in the same space that it had been. And then I eventually said, please stop.
Right.
And then I knew the day I was out was the day I got my first serious death threat. When somebody left a revolver magazine with 6 live rounds in it and a note on my doorstep.
How did that happen? Did that happen because you openly expressed your views which went against the original ideology that you had?
I had said to people, stop inviting me to these things. Please stop. And the conversations I was having with the people, they weren't the same. They could tell something was off in me. I couldn't quite tell something was off because I thought I was. But I look back on it and I can go, when you are really in it, it's easy to be really in it.
Yes.
When you are pretending almost, it's much more difficult.
Yes.
And when I had hit rock bottom and was coming out of it, I was pretending. Trying to do it, trying to recapture it, but I couldn't do it. So I was saying to them, please stop inviting me to these things. I don't want this anymore. And saying that and the things I was giving off, clearly somebody had taken that as an affront and had clearly said, we need to send a message that you can't be like this.
Right.
And that day that happened, the police told me, we would strongly advise you not to remain at this property. I went to a hotel.
And that's where your world changed.
Yeah. And then from that point, I realised, shit, what have I been doing? Where did my 20s go? What did I do for my 20s? And that's where my changes began to solidify.
So where are you now?
Learning. There's something that I said to somebody that surprises people. But I have made peace with the fact that I may be assassinated, so every day is a day to make the world a better place. Because I may not have tomorrow. So I want to make today a better place. I want to make the world better today. And that's the position that I'm in at the moment. I'm trying through outreach, I'm trying through learning, I'm trying through doing to make the world a better place one day at a time. I'm trying to do better in myself. I know I've got a lot of learning to do. I know I've got a lot of individuals that hate me and will probably always hate me. But it's a journey that I'm going on gradually. And yes, I will say things that people find ignorant. Yes, I will do things people find ignorant. But guess what? I've got no problem with you telling me that I've done those things. Don't expect me to know that I've done those things. And if you can tell me that I've done those things, I'll go, okay, then what was so incorrect about that? Why was that such an incorrect thing to do? Help me learn. As I say, a friend of mine, a fairly new friend of mine, sat down with them. She and I got chatting. And I said to her, I don't understand Black Lives Matter at all. I don't get it one iota. See me as a blank slate and tell me what it is as if I'm a Martian.
Yes.
Because that's the only way how I can learn. I've got to start again on some of these things.
That's right.
And that's where I am now. Trying to clean off all of the nonsense. And it's difficult.
It is difficult. And let me hold your thought for a moment. See, I say the same thing about anyone who's in a very extreme position. May that be an Islamist, may that be a person from the far right, the far left, whoever it may be. And I strongly believe in this idea that individuals and people need to be given information according to the way they process it. Always a different type of learners. Now, we are ready to give that to someone who may be from a far right position, but we don't extend the same understanding to the Islamist perspective, which is really sad, because for us, everyone is going through this, still humans, like you are.
And you, and Ivan, and everyone
100%.
listening.
100%. But we are ready to give an opportunity and a chance to an individual who has spewed out some very extreme views and ideas, who has probably become the reason for others to engage in them extremities and them type of activities. Now, yourself, and I'm may the Lord have mercy, what I'm saying? This is like hallelujah for me. It is. But it had to take something very extreme to jolt you out of that. So what I'm saying is, sometimes it has to take something very extreme, even the others, to jolt them out of that.
Yeah. The thing is, though, people will only change and modify in a way that they are comfortable changing and modifying. You cannot force the change or the modification in a way that is not going to be receptive to the person that is receiving it.
Right.
Why do so many individuals not excel with traditional schooling? Because of the way that classroom learning is done. It's seen as classroom learning, so therefore you have someone stand in front of the class, you go away, you do work, you come back, you go away, you do work. Some people may find that the most tedious thing on the planet. Some people may love that, thrive on it. But you have to see the plurality of learning and the plurality of movement and the plurality of individuals, and not just try to create this homogenous blob that will just do whatever you want.
I think, Phoebe, look, you are a very, very powerful voice in all of this. You
Thank
are
you.
one, and you are one voice amongst many voices which are saying the same thing at this moment. And I think you enhance that voice by many, many folds. And I think what you have shared with us today, right, a lot of people will definitely take that on board, and especially those individuals who are probably on the fringe of walking into an extreme position, and also those who have come out of them environments, right? They will find, 1 minute, this person is an individual who is academic, who's understanding, who has the ability to coin words and statements in a particular way and make people understand. She's ready to use her abilities to do the right thing. You are going to come across a lot of opposition, Phoebe. You're going to get a lot of tension. You're going to get a lot of people going to say, well, who the hell? You're going to get the same type. You might not get the same people around you who will say hallelujah to you.
Oh, I know. I've already seen it. I've already had the people that have said things that you're talking about. On other podcasts I've been on, people have left comments that have basically said, well, she was right then, she's wrong now.
Yes. So what I'm saying is, at any time, it is a possibility of slipping.
I know. Which is why I know I need to do this kind of work for me.
Yes.
It's not just for everyone else.
Yes.
It's also for me.
It is.
I need to unburden myself. I need to let this baggage go. I need to be able to release my own brain from itself, from its past, from where I came from to where I was, to where I want to be. It's going to be difficult. And if I don't find an outlet that is constructive, that is helpful, not only to everyone else, but also to me,
yes,
I'm going to go somewhere else.
That's right.
Whew.
I pray that you find that path. Right? I think with all of the impetus and with all of the motivation and with all the zeal that you have spewed out hate, and I think you have the ability and the capacity and the understanding and knowledge to share love with the world. And with that same type of motivation, with the same type of, I'm going to use the word anger, you will do the right thing because you have the capacity and ability.
But
go for it, Ivan. Go for it, Ivan.
I just want to say, Phoebe, right? I think Imran's correct. Your voice is going to be a powerful one. And we'll always have your back here. Do you know what I mean? If ever you need to reach out or chat to somebody, you know my details, just get in touch. I'm only a text away. Do you know what I mean? Do you think I get some of the hate you get still after 6 threats? I still get them. But for me, I embrace the hate now. I use that as my fuel to do good. Because if people are hating me now, it's because I'm saying something that resonates with them and they don't like it. Rather than take responsibility for themselves, then I'm forward, you know what I mean? Because I know they're thinking. So yeah, keep up the great work and we'll have you on again soon.
Well, thank you.
Phoebe, it has been a journey with you, and thank you very, very much for sharing your life, sharing your expertise, understanding, experience of your life. You know, there are many, many changes that take place in human beings' life because of different experience of life, of different situations and circumstances. I think your life is exactly that. Someone, if I think if we had a few more hours with you, all right, it'll be less. I think there's a lot to be unpicked and talked and discussed about. But what you have shared has really, hit home in a lot of ways. It does for me as an individual who works with people who are in very extreme positions, people who are autistic, people who have other, underlying other issues going on in their lives. You're a prime example that how that person can be used and abused, how that person's abilities, and I call this an ability. It's not a disability. The way your mind works is a very powerful ability.
Superpower.
It is a superpower, and we see as that. That's 100%. But now it needs to be used for love, for compassion, for understanding, for unity, and for those, when we said that to break out of that mold, and to see what's happening on the other side of that wall. And I'm using that literally here. When I use the word wall, I also mean Israel here. That's right.
Yeah.
So, and the other side of that wall.
Yeah.
Right? So hopefully, Phoebe, you can take your strengths, your powers, your superpowers forward and keep on doing the work that you're doing. Stay strong and stay steadfast in. That's what's important. And it's not like Ivan just said, it's not that suddenly the hate's going to go away. Go for it, Imran.
It's not. Remember where you come and just true to your path. If you know what I mean by that.
Say that again. I didn't hear what you said.
Your mindset, your lived experience, nobody can compare to that. Do you know what I mean? It's so valuable. You just need to realize how valuable your lived experience is and how much that can help others. So that's something to remember as well.
Guys, everybody who's been listening to Creating the Conversation podcast, we were being with this amazing individual, Phoebe J Rose. And I'm going to say thank you very much for coming on to this particular platform. Please don't go away anywhere, right? I'm just going to go offline at the moment. That's all it is. I just want to say thank you very much for sharing your life. And from the bottom of our hearts, myself, Imran and Ivan, thank you very, very much, Phoebe. And God bless you.
Right.
Take care, guys. Till next week. Signing out. Creating the Conversation podcast.